Gonzaga on the road. First true road game of the season to take on the Washington Huskies. We have our resident Gonzaga fan in the house. That would be Connor Hope from Heat Check CBB. Connor, you've got to be feeling good about where Gonzaga's at right now. The USC win was huge. We did the preview recap stuff last week for that one, and then they hang 111 points on Pine Bluff earlier this week. Now they've had 4 days of rest to prepare for a Washington team that has alternated wins and losses for the last 6 games. Good news for you. They're due for a loss, my friend. What do you expect challenge-wise? Is this one that you circle on the schedule, or is this another coast to a victory game for Gonzaga?
I mean, anytime it's an in-state rival, I feel like Gonzaga circles it on the schedule. They've owned recently the matchup with Washington, but a lot of those games were closer than the overall win-loss would suggest. And look, this is almost kind of a trap game for Gonzaga. They take on Washington and Mississippi Valley State, and then they have UConn in Seattle. So they're going to be back and forth this week. They go to Seattle to play Washington, come back home to play Mississippi Valley State, and then go back to Seattle to play UConn. And Washington, they're alternating win-losses. They play right now at a higher tempo than Gonzaga. They've got athletes on that team, and they fit together better than most teams I feel like Mike Hopkins has put together over the last couple of years. So it'll be really interesting to see how Gonzaga handles Washington. And I've said it before, that Keon Brooks, like what he can do and where he plays, really scares me, because you're going to have Hickman or Nembhard on Xavier Wheeler. Paul Mulcahy probably pulls one of them as well, because Keon Brooks is just so long. You almost have to put Dusty Stromer just for his size on him. You could slide Anton Watson down, but then you've got Dusty Stromer playing Moses Wood, who again is also, and that's probably actually what they end up doing, but Moses Wood can shoot the ball. He can score at multiple levels. So I think Dusty Stromer is in for a real test as a defender in this game, more so than he has been in most games this season.
Yeah, that would scare me as a Gonzaga fan, because with all due respect to Dusty Stromer, I don't think you ever want Dusty Stromer to be put in a position of, hey, you have to go check the other team's best player. And that's right. What this is to me, right? Like he is I agree with you completely. He's the only guy that makes sense on paper to draw that assignment, but you'd much rather hide him. The problem with Washington's roster is you can't really hide him anywhere. So I've affectionately referred to this Washington team this year as the island of misfit transfers, because there's no reason this team should complement each other well in my head. Like I can't process Xavier Wheeler and Paul Mulcahy working next to Keon Brooks. It makes no sense to me, but they've been productive. Honestly, of the 3, when I've watched Washington, I think I've seen them 3 full games this season. I've come away most impressed with Brooks. Obviously, I think he's their best player, but I've come away like with a larger gap between what I expect for the player and what they actually are now with Xavier Wheeler. I think he's kind of been good for them this year every time I've watched. And look, 2 years ago, he was really productive for a Kentucky team that, yes, there were questions and concerns, but he had a bunch of like 9, 10, 11 assist games. And I feel like people forgot about him given how little he played last season. And now here he is. He's in double figures every game this year. He has 12 assists in a game. That was against Colorado State. So my read on this is Xavier Wheeler might be their most important player, even if Keon Brooks is their best player. Would you agree with me with that?
Yeah, I mean, he sets the table for this offense. And the one thing Gonzaga has been over the past couple of years pretty poor at defensively, and they're better this year, but I still think that's probably their weakness defensively, is rotating on shooters. And when you have a guy like Xavier Wheeler who can drive to the rim the way he can and dish the ball the way he can and is as quick as he can, like he draws help defense quite a bit. And when you're a Gonzaga team that, and a lot of their missed a lot of their missed assignments defensively on the perimeter have come off broken plays or have come off loose balls. But every single one of these players, Keon Brooks is a 35% shooter. Corin Johnson's a 36% shooter. Moses Wood is their worst shooter outside of Xavier Wheeler at 30% in terms of like their key contributors. Mm-hmm. So Gonzaga needs to be on their A game. And when you have a guy like Xavier Wheeler who can draw help defense just by beating his defender on the perimeter and getting to the rim, that's where I think Hickman is probably going to draw the assignment on Wheeler, just because I feel like Hickman's been a better defender on the drive than Nembhard has been this season. Nothing against Nembhard. Hickman's just bought in defensively in a way that I didn't expect. And so you're looking at Xavier Wheeler probably looking to get 7 or 8 assists in this game just off of drawing an Anton Watson or a Graham Ike on help defense.
Yeah, Hickman has definitely felt like he's a do whatever it takes guy this year. Mm-hmm. And it's been fun to watch him transform his game into like a glue guy, but a very talented glue guy for the Gonzaga team. And I agree with you. If he is on Severe, I think that limits Severe significantly more than Ryan Nembhard could do. But 2, it opens the door for Gonzaga trying to do some classic Micah Shrewsbury booty ball with Paul Mulcahy here. Listen, anytime Paul can draw a small defender on him, he is very excited to back someone down. And if I were Gonzaga, I would love to live with that and see what happens in this game. Washington, I mean, given that Mulcahy and Wheeler are both very good passers and plus playmakers, great assists team, 56% of their made field goals are assisted on. That's 62nd in the country. So no matter how Gonzaga tries to match up with it, I still think there's going to be a mismatch for Washington to try and exploit. But the point is, nothing is going to be a bigger mismatch in this game than Gonzaga on the offensive boards, because Washington is pretty awful at limiting teams from second chances. Gonzaga has feasted there all game. How many offensive rebounds are you marking down for this team in this game?
Jeez. What's Gonzaga's average on the offensive boards? They average 15 offensive boards a game, 14 and a half. I'm going to go over on that. Mm-hmm. And not even, I don't even know if it's going to be the starters, right? You look at Braden Huff and Ben Gregg coming into these games against teams' second unit front courts. And Ben Gregg is one of those, like, he comes flying in for those offensive boards. Braden Huff, I think, is a little bit more of a box out and just go grab them. But Ike and Watson can get offensive rebounds out as well. It's just those two backup bigs seemingly come out of nowhere like 2 to 3 times a game between the two of them for offensive rebound putbacks that you're just not expecting. And against this Washington team, it's going to be tough, because you want to get out on offense. If you're Washington, you want to play at a high tempo, but Gonzaga is going to kill you if you try and leak out. You're going to have to dedicate 2 to 3 guys every possession if you want to limit those second chance points, because while Gonzaga is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country, they are also an extremely efficient shooting team. Mm-hmm. So they're not missing a ton of shots, and then they're grabbing the misses when they do. And there are teams that can be a mismatch for Gonzaga. I just don't know if Washington is that mismatch.
Yeah, I think it would take an extraterrestrial type performance from either Keon or whichever guard has Ryan Nembhard on him in this game in order to get there. And just for numbers on the offensive board. So the one game I think makes sense to map to this from Washington's season thus far, San Diego State. That was a highly entertaining game. The Aztecs ended up winning by 3 in overtime. But San Diego State had 17 offensive rebounds as a team in this game. Ledee himself had 9 offensive boards. Obviously, Ledee's great, but San Diego State as a team, not nearly as good as offensive rebounding, not nearly as intent on offensive rebounding as Gonzaga is. So I think you could crack 20 in this game. I think, like you said, Washington wants to run. They want to leak out. I don't see that changing. And I don't really see how Gonzaga's offense hits a hiccup here, given how good they were last game. Like, the team is just rolling right now. It seems like they're going to roll to a pretty smooth victory. What's your prediction formally for this one? How much does Gonzaga win by?
I'm going to go 8 or 9. I think this gets to the point where Gonzaga has to make free throws at the end of the game, and Gonzaga's just, I mean, they're better this year at shooting free throws, but they're still not a great free throw shooting team. So I feel like it'll be double digits heading into like the final minute or and a half to 2 minutes. And you'll see a Keon Brooks or someone else kind of hit a three to bring it close, but I think it'll stay high single digits.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's a single-digit ball game as well. Give me Gonzaga for the win. Washington's played a bunch of close games this year, though. Like, every top 100 opponent they've played has been the largest margin, 7-point loss to Nevada, which was at home. But, they beat Xavier by 3, San Diego State overtime by 3, Colorado State by 5 on a neutral. So I think they have enough to hang. I don't think they have enough firepower to win. Hopefully your Zags keep rolling and we can keep talking about it. That's Connor Hope from Heat Check CBB. I'm GregWaddell from Sleepers Media. Make sure you come back for the recap after Gonzaga Washington is finished this Saturday. That'll be on the Sleepers Media YouTube channel. Subscribe so you can see them all.